Welcome back to this GitHub video podcast. I have a very special guest. Daniel is an information security practitioner and writer out of San Francisco, California. He was born and raised in the Bay Area. He's been a practicing security tester and consultant for over 20 years with a focus on the security of network, web applications, mobile, and IoT systems across multiple verticals and for top Fortune enterprises. Daniel's interests are clusters around the intersection of security, technology, and the humanities, with a special focus on building cross-discipline models of how the world works and using them to improve outcomes. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks
you
for having
being
me
here. Oh my gosh, I am so thrilled. I'm going to try and be a good host to you and just get over the fact that I'm sitting across from you because I legitimately have been a big fan of your work for a long time.
So. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. There are so many projects that you're working on. You've been a security researcher. You work privately, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But a lot of the work that you've been doing in the past couple of years has been focused on that angle of humanity and thinking about connections and thinking about community. And for people in tech, that's sometimes a challenge, right? Especially when I think of folks in the security field, and hopefully this is changing. But when I first came into tech in 2016, you think about security research, security specialists as very secluded people, right? Very in the dark room, in the basement, not really talking to a lot of folks. How did you go from that expertise into focusing your work in really human progress and the projects that you're working on that are so focused on community and actually helping us all? How was that evolution? What inspired that?
I feel like I've always been interested in finding out like what a strong purpose was, like meaningful problems to try to solve. And I think when I was younger, I was thinking in terms of like technical security. So I would think a meaningful problem is like cross-site scripting or something like that. And then I feel as I just got older, it just expanded in scope. And at some point, because I read a lot, I would find what are these people trying to solve, right? What are the actual problems in the world? Like, why are humans stagnating? Why are they suffering? Why are they lonely? What are the actual problems for humanity? And you're building up all this knowledge of like how to use tech, how to use security, how to use hacking, how to use all these different things. And I'm like, that's a tool belt. Now let's figure out what the actual problems are and see how we could use these tools to solve those problems. And then when AI happened, that just unlocked a whole bunch of stuff for me because a lot of the stuff that I'm currently doing with AI, I'd been doing manually, right? But with AI, it just makes it that much more powerful.
Maybe the catalyst of AI becoming better, because this is not new technology per se, right? This been used in research, it's been in the academic, I guess, circles for a long time, but now it's so mainstream. Tell us a little bit about the first project that you focus. I guess as a result of now the technology is good enough, it can do my manual work for me. Was that Fabric?
Fabric. Yeah, I think Fabric probably was the first one. Yeah, and that one is really oriented around those problems that I talked about. So essentially, when someone's going through their day and they're trying to make their life better or faster or more optimized, what are the problems that they're commonly trying to solve, right? Summarizing technology, finding gotchas in a legal document or something like that. So I wanted to just basically have this crowdsourced list of problems and then write really good prompts to solve those problems and have it be agnostic to that model that's actually used. And because I'm a nerd, basically, it started off command line. And so it still mostly is command line, but we have a number of GUIs now, and a number of other people have been nice enough to build other GUIs around it. But ultimately, it comes down to basically the middle of 3, I was like, there's 19 different AI tools. Now there's like hundreds. But it's like there's a million different AI tools. There's a million different AI apps. There's a million different AI websites. But in a given moment, I am doing this. I am reading. I am summarizing. I am trying to find problems. I'm analyzing arguments. How do I go from the problem to using all this AI, which is available, but they're not connected? So Fabric was designed to be that connection, to take the tooling and tie it into the problems.
And you have a massive community now of contributors to Fabric. Since the inception of Fabric, you evolved into other projects, right, that you have launched, all very tied into that same, trying to solve the key problem, right?
Yes.
Were you surprised to find that so many people were ready to talk about this? Because I think it's interesting to me to see how popular the project is and how many contributions and people are doing to continue building it, when I thought that we were all just suffering in silence. How was that? Like, once you open source it, was it like immediately adopted? I know there's a lot of folks that obviously look up to you, security matters, but that's a whole different conversation, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a completely different group of people. A lot of the security people actually aren't so excited about the AI stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like a completely different group of people that's paying attention to this other work. I think the security people see the humanities stuff as just very disconnected, very high level. But I'm slowly convincing them, hopefully, that they are very much linked. Especially since one of my favorite things about the word security is that it's se, which is without, and cura, which is worry, from Latin. And what I'm ultimately trying to do, like all these different projects, down to upgrading humanity, in the sense of trying to get it to be more full spectrum human. Better versions of ourselves as a planet or as an individual as well. So when you look at something like security without worry, right now there's a lot of worry.
100%. There's
a lot of worry because declining communities, declining relationships, are we going to lose our jobs? That is a massive amount of worry that we're about to hit right now. Mm-hmm. I think AI is going to be definitely the biggest, but maybe the biggest ever like technological leap. Because previous tech was replacing particular tasks or jobs, right? But you can always use your intelligence to switch to a different job.
Right.
This is the only tech that actually replaces intelligence, right? So you're not hopping to the next thing because it's already there, right? And so I'm really just worried about, I have friends and family and I talk to them about AI and they're just like, isn't that ChatGPT? I thought that went away. Because it blew up in the news like a year ago.
Right.
And then it died down. Not to us, not to people here, but in the regular world. And I'm just very worried about them. So I'm just trying to find all these different ways of having an on-ramp for them to be ready for what's coming.
I appreciate that. You talk a lot about human augmentation. Mm-hmm. The replacement, right? Like,
yes.
This technology is not here to replace us, but to make us be the 3.0, the better version of ourselves.
Yes.
Which is so important. And I think that might be the key message that is lost when people are so skeptical about adopting technologies or actually leaning into using this for betterment of themselves. What is something that you've seen that has worked in communicating? I'm guilty of this. I don't know how to speak about these topics with like my parents, and I work a lot with Latin American communities who are just now starting to actually think, oh, wow, this might be a valuable thing for my business. I need to start looking at how I can use an agent to do this for me, or start incorporating some machine learning to better serve my customers, etc. What has been a good argument or conversation for folks that might be more skeptical or might not be interested? You're right. For people outside this conference, it might not even be in their radar.
Yeah, usually what I like to start with is I break down their day or their week or their month or their year and say, like, what do you do? And it could be anyone from any background, any like profession or whatever. It's like, get up, I make a breakfast or whatever. I'm not really sure which breakfast I'm going to make. I do this. So I'm writing all these things down. So I'm making this giant list of human things. Mm-hmm. We haven't started talking about tech yet. Then I show them some fabric patterns of, did you know you can find other authors? I could take your entire list of things that you just listed here, and then I can create a fabric pattern that says, for somebody who loves these things, what would you recommend they do to expand in these different areas? What are some artists that they would love? What are some other books that they would love? And so they see the output and they're like, oh, wow, so you're saying this helps with this? I thought this was a tech thing. No, tech is the enabler of actual human things. That's the way we should be thinking about it. Now, it doesn't mean all this bad stuff that we're hearing about AI, most of it can be true. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it will be true. But that doesn't mean the positive side can't win out if we focus on it enough and lift it enough, right? any tool is going to have negatives.
Of course.
Right? The question is, can we focus on the positive and change the narrative to like human first? Like I'm a big believer, I've spent my whole career in tech, but I'm a big believer that tech should serve the humanities. And it's really interesting that the people who are thriving the most now, and I think going to be thriving the most, are people who are clear thinkers. So they read a lot, they understand philosophy, they could look at things from different angles, because the actual just execution of things, that's going to be easy for AI to reproduce, but not so much the analytical piece.
This is very interesting. Having the human augmentation aspect of that, how you mentioned about being people that are like voracious readers, right? Like they can read. I love to be a voracious reader. I'm not. It's just not. I consume better listening. So I listen to artists.
No, it's the same.
To podcasts.
I listen too. I listen mostly, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
And I love to obviously have the time to go research. I think that there's so much information, which is great, but then half of it is either not relevant, not going to interest me.
Sure.
And then I spent 2 hours going down a rabbit hole and have an outcome that's I spent 2 hours and nothing of value. So using Fabric, I can pinpoint a better outcome for me.
Did you use label and rate?
No, I have not explored that yet.
Oh,
but I need to do that.
Yeah, you should check it out. So basically, you can send anything into it, and it'll give you a score. It'll give you a numerical score, but more importantly, it'll give you a recommendation. And the more context you give it about yourself, the more accurate it'll be. But it'll tell you, you should read this week.
Oh.
Or you need to watch this video this week. And then the next one says, watch it within the month. And the next one is, if you have time. And the fourth one is, you should probably skip it.
Huh.
So basically, I have a tool now that looks at all the different inputs coming in, and it rates them. And then it puts it into a feed.
That is amazing.
And I can actually slide the bar. It's called threshold. So I can slide it all the way till 95. And only things that hit a 95% show up in that list. So it could be only 4 things. But I know if I click on that thing, I'm going to love it. Because it did the assessment for me.
I love that. And with the more context that you give it, better outputs you're going to get, better results you're going to get. Have you seen anyone in your community using it for something that's been interesting to you? That's like maybe sparked a bit of curiosity. I love all the human utility of it because I'm always jokingly telling my husband we need an assistant, but I can't afford an assistant. Right. But it's great that leaning to technology to do those things. Have you seen anything that's been particularly interesting to you?
The most interesting thing is just seeing people building apps around the stuff.
Yeah.
Which is definitely what I'm hoping is going to continue. Yeah, there's quite a few things being built. It's pretty exciting.
Part of the thinking about the problems, how you can augment yourself as a human, is not the attorney that's going to be replaced. It's the attorney who doesn't use AI to parse through research and all that. That's one aspect of it, augmenting humanity. One of your projects, actually, most recent, the Substrate project that I'm beginning to understand, it's a lot about human understanding and communication.
Yes.
And I think we live right now in the absolute worst point in humanity as far as how we communicate to each other and how we can just have civil discord.
Yes.
The internet's made that just absolutely horrific. I started my career in community management of open source communities.
Oh, wow.
And the maintainers, like the lack of love and the way that we communicate when we're like keyboard warriors and you're not looking someone in your face.
Yes.
That's only been magnified 10x, right? Like now we live in an era that it's easier to just scream and to avoid.
Yes.
And so Substrate, I think, is a very interesting project. It's also a project that uses Fabric, correct? And then
it's independent, but Fabric works against the Substrate once you have it collected. Yeah, okay. So they all kind of work together.
And correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that it's a tool so that you can have these conversations.
Yes.
And that non-bias, I don't know if non-bias is the correct way of calling it, or more with multiple angles.
Yeah, at least visible bias. At least if there is bias, like you call it out as a thing. So the way I'm thinking about it is like transparency into the things that we're discussing. Yeah, so I was coming up with a new thing. I'm always trying to lock this thing down because it's, I don't know, it's nebulous. But so a crowdsourced collection of meaning objects.
Okay.
Designed to move humanity forward. So the meaning objects are like a fact claim or an argument or a data source. And I got an example here of someone says, hey, they see me recycle into a recycle bin. They say, that's a total waste of time. And I say, oh, really? I didn't know that. They're like, yeah, so actually most of these programs, they don't work at all. It's only 7% effective. And gives 3 more fact claims, and says, therefore, it's useless, and actually worse than useless, because you're actually spending a whole bunch of effort doing this, and it's actually costing California more money or something.
Oh, wow.
So, no, I don't know that's true. They made that claim. So I'm sitting here. I just heard you or whoever else make that claim. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So I walk away. Now, all I remember is this person said some things that sounded smart, right? And they made a pretty good argument, I think. I can't remember exactly what the fact claims were. There's no real way to look them up, right? Let's say I was equally opinionated in the opposite direction. Okay. And I hit them with it's actually 34% and blah, blah, blah. And we've shown this much, whatever. Now I've got different fact claims and I've got different sources. And going to your point, this is what's happening in most conversations. It's back and forth with all this blah, 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 blah. What I am trying to do with Substrate is make it so that each one of those fact claims, about the 7% or whatever, that's captured in GitHub.
Okay.
It is tied to, and I want to encourage people to say, which I got from New York Times, which I got from some random website or whatever. So you have a fact claim, and then you have that pointed to a source. That source has a domain, right? That domain can have a trust score or whatever, which lots of other people can update or whatever. But the point is, you have an argument, you have claims inside of the argument, and you have a conclusion. There's actually an argument now that's actually in Substrate. I put the first one in there. It's about that AIs actually do understand. And I made a deductive argument, which means it's like if you believe all the premises, you must accept the conclusion.
Right.
So I make this very structured argument. And now when I go to have this conversation with somebody, I can refer them to the ID, the URL inside of GitHub, and they can see it. So I think that's pretty cool. Not super useful, though, in the manual conversation. Because if you're talking, I can't be like looking stuff up.
Right.
What's really cool, though, is if you have this conversation with me, you make an argument inside of this conversation. This transcript can then shoot off. Fabric grabs it, sees all the links in Substrate, and you need a little bit of agent stuff in here to be able to do this. But basically everything you mentioned, if you mention, okay, Substrate ID this or whatever, or it could even find the Substrate IDs for these. But it could actually just build an object.
Okay.
And the object is, here's the argument, and here are the different claims. Those claims then point to source, right? So let's say I see your argument visually. I can now look and say, actually, I don't think I believed her argument, but now that I see all the fact claims, and I actually trust all those sources, and I can actually pull up the source and see it, I think I actually do believe this argument.
Interesting. So tools for better understanding and seeing it with different perspectives that you trust, right? Because that's also, but at the end, the human is making the decision.
Sure.
So Substrate is not analyzing the argument and giving you what the conclusion is. It's just facts.
It can, right? So, but absolutely. Substrate is just the underlying components.
Okay.
It's all the pieces. Now, you could write a fabric pattern or do some sort of AI analysis that says, give me your hardcore opinion, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay.
You can force an AI to do that, and it can give you an answer. But I think what's more useful is to be like, do a plus and minus analysis of these arguments. Or take all of her arguments, take all of mine, and we're getting ready to sit down and do a podcast. Why don't you come up with some topics for us to talk about? Because we have all these shared interests. Let's do 70% shared interests. Find us 30% where we disagree so we can have a spirited debate, right? And now it could take, what I'm really going for, which is part of this Damon project, is that I can have all of my interests, all of my arguments, all of my predictions, all of my favorite books, favorite art, whatever. It's all listed there. And then when you look at me with your AI or your AI looks at me, it can build that constellation.
Okay.
And then that constellation can be context for you asking a question with something like Fabric that says, what should we talk about? If we were to go into business together, what kind of business should we open? Design me a marketing plan for that business. And because it has this whole constellation, now it could be referencing these books that I like and these movies that you like and merge these together into a unified project.
And that's something that would physically take years of knowing you, because no one's going to have the context that the tool can have for you.
That's right.
That is fascinating. I like that, being able to have opinionated conversations, but especially, I have this question, somebody asked me the other day, because we're trying to make an argument for something this might be beside the point, but they say, what's the best way to talk to him about it? And so 3 paragraphs later, I feel like I'm like, this is a phone call, because I feel like I'm not explaining very well the context of how you should go to this angle, and maybe don't mention this.
Yes.
But that's something that can be automatically done.
100%. So I love that you brought that up. That's a great point, because one thing I'm working on, I'm trying to figure out how to do with Substrate or something, is exactly what you just said, which is there's this great, it's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. It's a book that really changed me politically and gave me like this more accepting, soft view of everyone's argument.
Okay.
So what it talks about is how different people from different parts of spectrums, they value different things. Mm-hmm. So it's not that they don't have values. It's that their weighting and their focus is on different sides of it. And it talks about in this book, they use different language to describe them. Mm-hmm. So what I'm still really excited about is this concept of a translator. So just like you said, how should I talk to them?
Yeah.
What if we talk to them in their language? So we take my concern, but the AI is like all knowing with all this knowledge, so it knows how to do the translation. So it's instead of saying blah, 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 you should say blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, you say it and they're like, hadn't thought of that before. Wow. So now we're really communicating.
I think a lot of misunderstandings in communication come from that also.
Yes.
And we live so connected now. I was born in Colombia, raised in Colombia. You're 100% correct. I'm very Americanized. I lived in the States for over 20 years now. But even going back and having these conversations with my family there, like, yeah, we might agree on certain things, but there are certain things that are more important to you from your perspective.
That's right.
And that's the cultural norm, or is just the way that it is. And so it's impossible for me to come in and impose that. I love having that soft, like a soft approach on disagreeing with people's, but the importance they place on things.
Yes.
I need to read that book.
Yeah, The Righteous Mind. It's fantastic.
That sounds like coming from a place of compassion, which is, we need a lot of that now, for sure.
Yes.
For sure. Daniel, this has been such a good conversation. I don't know if there is anything you'd like to share. I'm going to point on the links to your demos of Fabric and Substrate, and of course the repos, so that people, if you want to contribute to the project, you have, I don't know how many contributors now. I dare say hundreds, because the contribution list is pretty long. Mm-hmm. And then check it out, go see if there's definitely an application for it in your personal life, but even for business or
absolutely.
For whatever. Anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, I don't think so. I just appreciate the support, the interest in the projects, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.